Welcome back to the Reading and Writing Podcast. My guest today is Mary Dixie Carter, author of the debut novel, The Photographer. Mary, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Jeff. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and to have this conversation with you.
Absolutely. Well, if someone hasn't yet heard about your novel, The Photographer, how would you describe the novel?
So Delta Dawn is the photographer. She takes pictures of wealthy New Yorkers and their children. And at the opening of the book, she goes to the home of Amelia and Fritz Strauss to photograph their daughter's 11th birthday party. And she falls in love with this family and she becomes obsessed with this family. And the book is the story of her trying to insinuate herself into the family. So there, I won't say too much more. That's in a nutshell.
Okay. Do you remember the original idea or impetus that led you to writing The Photographer?
Yes, I do. I hired a photographer myself to take pictures of my two children who are now 11 and 8. And so this was a few years back. So I got the pictures back and they were really beautiful, very talented photographer. But my children's eyes in the photos were cobalt blue and they're not in real life. And I said to the photographer, I'd like for my children's eyes to be their real color. And she said, there is no real color. And I was so fascinated by that point of view and by that worldview. And it stuck with me. And at that time, I wrote a few pages with a scene kind of with this photographer and this family and the basic dynamic between the photographer and family. And I put it aside for a couple of years and finally was going through different files on my computer and I came to that one and I was like, that's the one that I want to pursue. And so that's what happened. And so I wrote The Photographer.
And have you met or known people like your protagonist, Delta?
So, yes. I mean, yes and no. I think that we are all a tiny bit like Delta. And I hope that the reader will, even though she's just got tons of issues, she's very destructive, she's very self-destructive, she does a lot of bad things. But I hope that the reader can have compassion for her or connect to her on some level, because I think what is driving her is loneliness and feeling as though she's an outsider and wanting to be part of something and wanting to be inside something that she feels that she is always outside of. So on one level, I think I have felt like that before. I felt like an outsider. And I think everyone has felt like an outsider at times. But then there's a whole other thing that Delta has going on, which is this lying to herself, like in an extreme way, lying to others and lying to herself. So we all lie to ourselves. I lie to myself sometimes, I know. But Delta just goes above and beyond in lying to herself. I do know some people that lie to themselves, and I'm sure you do too. Like someone who once they lie about something, the really, really good liars believe the lie once they've lied about it. Like they really buy into it full on 100% themselves. And that's how they're so convincing, is because they really believe it. And I know some people like that. And it's incredibly frustrating because you can't have a normal argument with someone about what they're lying about if they've convinced themselves of the new reality. It's very hard to do that.
Well, what was your own writing journey that led you to writing and getting your debut novel published?
So my own writing journey, I started off as an actress. I was on the stage. I did classical theater, um, Oscar Wilde, Tennessee Williams. I really enjoyed acting, and I left acting only to go work for my father, who he at that time he was the publisher of the New York Observer. So he asked me to go work for him in the family business, and I did. And so at that newspaper, at the New York Observer, I was the publishing director, but I also wrote quite a bit. Um, Now, I throughout my life, even when I was acting, I was still writing. I was always writing something, and I enjoyed writing, and I felt like I was good at it. So the Observer I wrote, obviously it was a different kind of writing, journalism. And then he sold the paper. I left when he sold the paper, my father, and then I started freelancing for other publications like The Economist and San Francisco Chronicle and, various different book reviews and arts reviews. Now I'll just say that I think my acting background and my journalism background both have been really valuable in writing novels, because they're different skills, but I use all of that in writing a novel. Anyway, around the time that I was pregnant with my first child, my daughter, I wrote a novel, while I was pregnant. I wrote a draft of a novel. It was called It Sparkles as It Burns. And that novel was never published. People said really nice things about it. I did have an agent, a different agent who sent it around, and a lot of people, said they liked it, but no one wanted to publish it. So I, went round in circles on that novel, thinking, oh, if I change this, if I do that, maybe. And then eventually I just said, okay, it's really time to move on to the next one and put this aside. Maybe one day it will be published, and, that would be great. So it was then that I went back to, as I mentioned, I had these various different files on my computer with notes, like lots of different little documents with little scenes or little notes about ideas and possible ideas. And then I landed on that one about the photographer. And I was still really, really intrigued by that, by exploring that point of view. And so this book is in first person, and I really just dove into that first person narrator, almost in a claustrophobic way, staying with her point of view and allowing her voice to take the story where it would. And so here I am, and I'm thrilled now because I know, I had it turn out differently where I was not able to publish my first novel. So I know how fortunate I am, and I'm super grateful and happy about it.
And when you went back to that file on your computer with some notes and pages for the photographer, what was your process at that point? I mean, you mentioned that it's first person. Did you just kind of dive into the narrative and the story? Did you sit down and do any kind of like storyboarding or outlining? What was your process?
I did not do any outlining, storyboarding, nothing like that. I did dive into it, and I didn't know what it was going to be. And I didn't know. Yeah, I just started writing it. And in this particular case, I think it was the right choice. Um, I, I was surprised myself by where the story went. I did not know how it was going to turn out. I did not know how it was going to end. And I'm glad that I was surprised, because I hope that the reader will also be surprised because since I was surprised, hopefully it won't be predictable.
Sure. So are you working on another novel now?
I am working on another novel. I don't have too much to share yet about
Sure.
the other novel. But I can say something exciting, which is that the photographer, I sold the television rights and it's being adapted into a series. And I'm also not really allowed to announce it. It has not been formally announced yet.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I can't say who is involved and everything, but I can say that it's in the works and it's being developed and I'm really, really happy about that.
That's great.
And now, yes, I'm moving on and writing another novel and soon I'll have something more concrete to tell you about that.
Sure. And do you think that at some point you will go back to that first novel that you mentioned that you weren't able to get published?
It's a good question. I like every time I think about going back and reading it and looking at it, I'm like, not yet, not yet. I'm not ready to go back to it yet. So yes, eventually I will go back, I will read it and really think seriously about whether I want to try to publish it, or change it a little bit and then publish it, something like that. But not right at the moment.
Sure.
It's not, I'm not trying to do that right now.
Sure. Well, what writing advice would you offer for those who are working on their own stories or novels?
So one of the things that I would say is something that I say to myself, which is I have to write a lot of bad pages before I write anything good. And that's like the nature of it. Maybe other writers have a different process where they really, every word they write is really like they work out every sentence as they're working through this and they feel good about every sentence. I know that a lot of what I write is going to be bad. And it's almost like I need to keep going through that to find the story. And it'll take a while. And so what I would say to the writers is don't be judging those pages that you write. Don't criticize them. Keep writing. And maybe you'll be throwing out a lot of those first pages, but they will inform the rest of your book or the rest of your short story or whatever it is you're working on. Those pages that you throw out. And you couldn't have even gotten to the good pages if you didn't write those bad pages. That's what I would say.
That's great. Well, what novels have you read recently that you enjoyed?
I just finished reading Separation Anxiety by Laura Zigman, and it is so good. It is just excellent. It's so funny, but also heart-wrenching and kind of alternating between really, really funny and really heart-wrenching. And, and ultimately, very like uplifting. But, I happen to have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. And one of the things that's happening in this book is the 13-year-old boy is pulling away from his mom and, backing off from her. And so it really hit home for me in a lot of different ways. And it's also the main characters lost both of her parents recently. And that also hit home. And I lost my mother and my stepfather. So it resonated for me. And I think it would for a lot of people.
Well, where can people find you online if they'd like to learn more about you and your debut novel, The Photographer?
So I'm on Instagram. You could send me a message on Instagram. I'm also on Mary Dixie Carter on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter. I'm also on Facebook. And I have a website, marydixiecarter.com. And Yeah, I would love to hear from readers. I would love to hear from you if you've read the book, if you haven't read the book. Either way, I'd love to hear from you.
Great. Well, again, we've been speaking with Mary Dixie Carter, author of the debut novel, The Photographer. The novel is on sale now, so go buy a copy. Mary, thanks for doing this interview.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Calling all partners. Losing weight is better together with Nutrisystem's Partner Plan. In fact, people who diet together lose 20% more weight than dieting on their own. Get new premium meals with up to 30 grams of protein. They're big and filling and taste delicious. Plus, try our new restaurant faves that taste like your favorite restaurant, portioned with half the calories. Don't wait. You could win big cash during Nutrisystem's Better Together Partner Plan 100K giveaway. And maybe win the grand prize of $25,000. Just go to Nutrisystem.com/thin right now and get 50% off plus an extra $50 off your first month. You heard me right. Go to Nutrisystem.com/thin right now and get 50% off plus an extra $50 off. Don't wait. This partner plan offer will not last long. Just go to Nutrisystem.com/thin right now and get 50% off plus an extra $50 off. Go to Nutrisystem.com/thin. See website for details on our 2-month subscription offer. No purchase necessary. Open only to U.S. residents over 21. Void where prohibited. Runs December 25 through April 4th, 2022. For official rules, visit Nutrisystem.com. Sponsored by Nutrisystem, Inc.